Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of Radioscope. This evening we bring you a brief sketch of women scientists in our editorial section, an interview on United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2020-2030. On the occasion of Doctors' Day, we have young women doctors sharing their views, and finally, in our snippet section, we take a glance at some scientific technical innovations by students. In our editorial section, we remember some of our pioneering women scientists.
Science is the guiding light that helps mankind transit from darkness to the well-lit realm of knowledge. Women scientists have contributed a great deal in keeping the light alive and flickering with hope, have inspired the mankind and guided us towards a progressive world. Let us briefly get introduced to 5 such women scientists. India's and Karnataka's first women engineer, Rajeshwari Chatterjee, is one such inspiring women scientist. She faced rejections at a few great science institutes to receive guidance just because of her gender, but she went ahead with confidence and self-belief. She established the first microwave engineering laboratory in India. Dr. Rajeshwari has done enormous research in the field of electron tube circuits, radio engineering, and has received laurels and awards like J.C. Bose Memorial Award, Mountbatten Award, and many more. Dr. Anna Mani is another inspiring women scientist who has also become the first women meteorologist of India. When she was a child, she was refusing birthday gifts in the form of jewelry but was pleading for encyclopedias. She grew up and took up the responsibility to head a team of 121 male scientists. She played a pivotal role in training her colleagues on designing instruments and assembling them to accurately measure wind speed and solar energy. Her contributions to the field of meteorological instrumentation has paved way for greater achievements in the field of physics and meteorology. Dr. Aditi Pant is another Indian women scientist who inspires young girls to open up their horizons and reach for their dreams and aspirations. Aditi Pant is the first Indian woman to visit the unwelcoming Antarctica. She was a part of Indian Antarctic program and played pivotal role in establishing Dakshina Gangotri, the first Indian science research base in Antarctica. This woman oceanographer, who was inspired by the book Open Sea, is an inspiration herself to the current and future generations to dedicate themselves to the field of research and science. Dr. Dorothy Hodgkins, a European woman scientist who excelled in X-ray crystallography, has worked enormously in the field of chemistry. She was an expert in understanding the 3-dimensional structure of important biochemicals. Through this research of hers, she solved the puzzle of structure of the first ever antibiotic, that is penicillin. She also changed the world of people struggling by diabetes by analyzing and understanding the 3-dimensional structure of insulin hormone. This helped in synthesis of insulin in lab, and the rest is history, as we all know. This Nobel laureate and every other women scientist are trailblazing achievers who transform the present and future of our world distinctively.
On the occasion of United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030, we bring you an interview with Professor Gururaja KV. Talking to him is Kshama V. Bhanuprakash, science writer and educator.
We are privileged to host Dr. K.V. Gururaja, Professor and holder of Dr. T.M.A. Pai Endowment Chair at the Endurance, Acoustics and Anthropogenic Climate Change Lab at Srishti Manipal Institute, Bengaluru. Dr. Gururaja's extensive research in amphibian ecology, behavior, and landscape restoration in India's Western Ghats has led to the description of 23 new frog species, 3 new breeding behaviors, and 2 new fish species. He also co-authored a recent Nature paper on global amphibian declines in the face of emerging threats. An advocate of citizen science, he leads programs like Mapping Malabar Tree Toad and Frog Watch India and champions habitat restoration through the Batracharium In Situ Conservation Initiative. His achievements include the State Biodiversity Award, the Geospatial Excellence Award for the Frog Find app, and the Prajavani Achievers Award 2022. Today's conversation ties Dr. Gururaja's work to the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a global movement to prevent, halt, and reverse ecosystem degradation across forests, wetlands, and human landscapes. Welcome, Dr. Gururaja.
Thank you, Kshama. Thank you, Akashwani, for the invite.
Under the UN Decade, restoration projects emphasize local engagement and biodiversity recovery. Dr. Gururaja, your Frog Watch and Mapping Malabar Tree Toad citizen science initiatives appear to align with the approach. How have these projects contributed to habitat restoration efforts in Western Ghats, and in what ways do they support UN goals for ecosystem restoration?
Thanks to last 20-25 years, we were able to discover more species. Like where we are standing today is about 465 species of amphibians in India. This is one of the key learning for me through years of experience working in the field. Instead of looking at a species, can we focus on landscape? But our entry point can be amphibians. And that's how we started with frogs. When people start looking at frogs in their backyard, there is a way they engage with. They perhaps take a picture and post it. That is a good way to say what you have. So once you know what you have, then if there are issues related with what you don't have or what you are going to lose, people themselves are champions. I need not have to be there. And scientists can't go everywhere.
The UN's vision highlights mosaic restoration, integrating ecological, social, and economic functions across landscapes. Could you explain how the Batracharium model functions as an in situ restoration tool and how it connects with larger scale mosaic restoration of amphibian habitats in Western Ghats?
Frogs are associated with rainfall, and there are cultural practices where they do frog marriages. 3 years ago, after the COVID, there was a proper marriage function that happened in, I think, Kalsanka near Udupi, and they elaborately did the marriage function of marrying of 2 bullfrogs, which is very common in India. When I showed that movie clip, people were telling me it is very cruel. So let us see it from the conservation perspective. If you can see what is they are trying to do, with which if there are conservation aspects, why can't we just appreciate that? What they have and what we have. Can we have a negotiating space where we can pitch and talk about? What we need, have something for people to watch, read, right? So we are translating that as a small booklet of an area, having the listed species over there, and we give it out to people saying that, okay, go around this place, you're going to see these species. So we started this in one of the leading hotel in Karnataka, in Coorg, and then we replicated that in a small homestay in Karkala. So these are the 2 places now which is practicing Batracharium. Again, why we selected those places instead of protected area is the protected area is already there, which is fortified.
Amphibians are very sensitive to environmental degradation. Based on your findings in Nature and wider field work, how can amphibian monitoring guide restoration priorities, especially regarding hydrology, forest connectivity, and climate resilience in degraded Western Ghats landscapes?
A discovery of the century is the Nasica batrachus species, or the pig-nosed frog from Kerala. The question is, this was known to people much earlier. Even 100 years ago, the tadpole of the species was described. People use the tadpole as a bushmeat. Now, how the scientific information gets into what people are practicing. As long as people practice for their own cultural practice, that should be allowed. But the moment it becomes a kind of thing where it is marketed or it is done in large scale, that is where we need to intervene. Otherwise, some of these things I think we should just accept and move ahead. What I personally feel is that we have to engage with the people, make them understand what kind of ecosystem function amphibians do, because they are the bioindicator as well as they feed on insects. At least 1/10 of the body size of a frog, any frog for that matter. Bullfrogs weigh around 400 grams. 1/10 is 40 grams. 40 grams of insects You can imagine how many it would be. And how can they damage the crop? For somebody to conserve, it needs to connect to their daily life. I can't simply say that, oh, go and conserve frog. So the first question is why frog? What it does? So if you are able to connect these dots and their ecosystem function and how it is beneficial, even though benefit shouldn't be seen as something for which you have to conserve, but at the same time you need that connecting point. If you are able to do that, I can see a lot of scope from people who will say, okay, we know what species we have, we know how much we are spending on this, and how we can reduce the consumption of pesticides, and that's how our crops are growing.
You have worked extensively in India's Western Ghats and have been to Amazon forests too. Do you observe similar ecosystem degradation issues such as deforestation, fragmentation, biodiversity loss in both regions? And if restoration methods applied in the Amazon, such as reforestation corridors, agroforestry, hydrological restoration, do they prove effective? Could they be adapted here in Karnataka's Western Ghats too?
So Amazon is pretty large. Diversity is pretty huge. What you have in India perhaps is 465 species. What you have in Amazon is 900 species of amphibians. So all the issues are similar, but the extent or the scale is completely different. We also have population hugely remaining in these areas. And the resources over there is not restricted to them, but it goes to, let's say, Bangalore requires power supply. Where it comes from Sharavati, which is inside the Western Ghats. And people are seeing it as resource, so that's why they want to tap it also. There are many dams that is being constructed. Why? Again, there is a resource, there is some user. I follow Madhav Gadgil's approach in saying that it is people who should know what is happening to them, rather than people sitting in Bangalore or scientists sitting here trying to tell them. One of the example is the fortified conservation, right? We have top-down approach kind of, we have a blanket fortified conservation of tigers. Nobody should be there, evict them from the tiger conservation zones. It may not work in Karnataka because people have lived with tigers for many, many years. The moment you do these kind of stuff, there's conflict. So how to reduce conflict, we should be looking at. So how to involve people, we should be looking at. I am not against development, but development at what cost? Are we able to understand ecology as a primary thing than development? Right. One example I give before I conclude this, Malabar tree toad is considered as an endangered species in 2004. It was first described in 1875-76 by Gunther. For 100 years, it was not observed. So based on these few observations and talking to few scientists at that point in time, IUCN declared it as an endangered species. However, fast forward to 2020, when we had done this as a mapping Malabar tree toad project, there were 200 plus observations from Western Ghats, and IUCN declared it as least concern. So see from endangered how it has become least concern. Now, is that over? It is not over, because policy still has not accepted. And policy came in 2022 of Indian Wildlife Protection Act in revised, amended list of species. Now the Malabar tree toad is a Schedule 2 species. The challenge is not putting it in Schedule 2. The challenge is it's already declared as least concern. Why it still got the Schedule 2? Now, in order to change Schedule 2, it has to be again tabled in Parliament. Now, you see how much delay, the time get lost in this translation of scientific knowledge into a policy. In all these things, for me, where is that quick translation of knowledge into implementable thing on ground? I think this is where our conservation has to take a different route of appreciating complexity, understanding the ground realities, and coming back and working around these things. That's where I stop.
Dr. Gururaja, your leadership in scientific discovery, citizen engagement, and habitat protection illustrates how research can intersect with action in real landscapes. We appreciate your time and wish you continued success in restorative science and conservation efforts. Thank you for joining us at Akashvani, Bengaluru.
Thank you, Kshama, and thank you, Akashvani.
Thank you, Shama, for that insightful interview. On the occasion of Doctors' Day, we have an interview with young doctors, Dr. Madhuri H.N. Talking to her is Dr. Sanjana Kangil on the topic Beyond the White Coat, addressing the mental health of women doctors in India.
Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Sanjana Kangil, Senior Resident at Telemanas Karnataka NIMHANS, and today I'm here with Dr. Madhuri, Assistant Professor Telemanas Apex Center NIMHANS. I would also like to add Dr. Madhuri has completed her postdoctoral fellowship in women's mental health. So today we are here to talk about a very important topic, that is Beyond the White Coat, addressing the mental health of women doctors. Isn't stress very common when it comes to doctors?
I would like to start saying that medicine is a very, very demanding field. While all doctors face stress, I think women doctors carry additional burden. Microaggressions are very subtle, like the patients questioning their expertise or preferring a male doctor. Here, I would like to kind of cite two examples. When I work in the hospital setting, many times I have been addressed as sister. That shows how they undervalue women doctors in the hospital settings. And I have also noticed like how they call sir or doctor to the male doctors. Another example, when I have actually interviewed patient, I have assessed, I have started the treatment. So at the end, they ask, can I see a senior doctor? You can see how women doctors are undervalued and under-recognized at their workplace. These kind of repeated experiences can reduce anyone's confidence, and also it often goes unreported, unrecognized, as I said. Women are undervalued professionally and often perceived as less competent than the male counterparts. And there is a lot to discuss on unequal pay, limited opportunities for the career advancement.
Can you tell me a little bit about gender roles and how would that affect the women doctors' well-being, especially in a country like India?
Getting promoted to senior positions are often showed in favor of men, leading to fewer women doctors in leadership roles. Actually limits the mentorship opportunities for the junior female doctors, especially in the medical field. Women doctors are often stereotyped as more suited for nurturing specialities like pediatrics or gynecology. Again, speaking about the gender roles, especially in India, we see even after work, when you have attended a busy OPD or you have attended a emergency call, emergency duty, the woman gets back home and gets back on her toes for her house responsibilities. Definitely this adds to the mental fatigue of the women, leaving a little time for rest or self-care. I think it's an invisible burden that contributes significant to the emotional strain. As I was speaking about the promotions, it's mainly kind of being favored to men. I think it's during that 30s, the initial 30s or the late 30s, when women has a child and she has an opportunity for promotion where she's on maternity leave, and in many places that is not being considered and she's not being favored because she's just delivered the baby and she cannot actually report to work immediately. I have seen a lot of patients who actually suffer from premenstrual syndrome and even in severe forms where they have to be treated. Actually, it's quite severe. But I think that is again being kind of underplayed, underreported, and women actually face a lot of stigma in reporting that. Also, I would like to quote a study which was done among 196 women who were physicians. So almost 50% of the women had high stress, 44% were mentally tired, 17% of the women took antidepressant drugs, 73% of the women reported verbal abuse at workplace, 33% of women reported physical assault at workplace. So when they also did a focus group discussion, the main themes which came across was high expectations from their roles, having multiple roles as we discussed at workplace and home, and also definitely stress in the work environment.
The statistics seem to be a little bit concerning regarding the well-being of the women doctors at the workplace. How about we speak a little bit about their safety? So do you think women doctors are facing a lot of safety concerns at their workplace too?
Definitely, yes. I'm sure we have heard about the horrendous crime which happened in Kolkata recently, and there were multiple strikes related to it, from unsafe night shifts to harassment in various forms from colleagues and patients. These safety concerns create a chronic stress and can lead to hypervigilance, anxiety, depression, and trauma in women. It's just that we don't recognize the invisible emotional strain which women experience.
So do you think there are any positive changes that are being made at the workplace?
Over the past few years, there has been growing recognition both within the medical fraternity and among the policy makers. So there have been positive steps and emerging trends. I would like to say it's not uniform across the hospitals or across the institutions. I think we have a long way to reach there. At the end, I would like to add a few words. I think behind the white coat is a human being who deserves rest, kindness, and understanding. I think Doctors' Day, it's just not a celebration but a commitment. Let this Doctors' Day be more than symbolic. Let it mark the beginning of honest conversations, honor their struggles, their silence, their emotional resilience, silently contributing to the society and to the humanity.
And now joining us over phone, we have Dr. Archana M.H., a native of Karnataka, presently resident doctorate of medicine at King Edward Memorial Hospital, Mumbai, also contributing to the topic Beyond the White Coat, addressing the mental health of women doctors in India.
Hi, I'm Dr. Archana and I'm currently doing my second year of super specialization in endocrinology. I want to share something very real. It's about the emotional and mental health struggles that a lot of the women doctors in India face every day. I don't want to be the person who starts off with a quote, but it's a quote that stayed with me. It is a quote that a friend told me a while back. There are three classes of human beings: men, women, and women physicians. It's something that Sir William Osler said. He's one of the founding figures of modern medicine. Unfortunately, he meant it ironically. It was his way of expressing doubts that people held at that time about women in medicine. Even Osler changed his mind eventually, over time, once he came to deeply respect the strength, capability, and dedication of women doctors. And that shift in perspective, it's still happening today, and I'm very glad that it's happening. But being a woman in medicine isn't just about treating patients or learning advanced procedures. It's also about constantly balancing competing demands. We work very long hours, 24 hours, sometimes even 36 hours straight in a lot of very busy branches. When we are visibly tired or emotionally drained, there's very little room to step back or take care of personal emergencies. The system expects us to keep going no matter what. Then come the assumptions. There are some quiet and some loud. Many of us are very routinely mistaken for nursing staff. It happens on an everyday basis. Some patients question our decisions, and when it comes to promotions or leadership roles, seeking therapy can still feel risky. There's a lingering fear of judgment from peers, from seniors, from society. So instead of speaking up, many of us choose to stay silent. Not because we're okay, but because silence feels a lot safer. But silence doesn't have to be the only option. What can help is having access to mental health care, which is truly private and free from stigma, something that doesn't jeopardize careers, but helps sustain them. We also need flexibility at work. That includes fair promotions, reasonable hours, and recognition of the unseen work that women do beyond the hospital. And most important, we need connection, a network. We need safe space where women doctors can talk honestly and mentor each other, and also remind one another that you're not alone in this. Medicine is more than just a profession. It's a calling. But no one should have to sacrifice their well-being or stay silent just to keep doing what they love. Osler's words, they were once meant as a joke. Now they serve as a reminder of just how far women in medicine have come and of how much further we can go together. The conversation about the mental health of women doctors in India is not just important, it's urgent. And I believe that by speaking up, we can start to change the society and the story, especially for ourselves and for the next generation of women in medicine. And I also would like to wish all doctors a very happy Doctors' Day. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, doctors. And that brings us to the final section, being presented to you by Amulya S. She is a science content writer. Over to you, Amulya.
In today's episode, with full spirit, we are meeting young change makers who dare to ask, what if? And then build the answers themselves. So, sit back as we tune in one story at a time. First, let's head across the globe. Daniel Park, a student from the United States, won the Invention Convention America's Best in Show. His project wasn't just impressive, it was potentially life-saving. Daniel created a simulation focused on perchlorate bioremedication, a method to clean up a harmful chemical that can affect our soil, water, and even our thyroid. He modeled how special proteins called PCR-ABCD can help neutralize these toxins. Now that may sound highly technical, and it is. But think about it. A student working from a lab bench or maybe even a bedroom desk may have just unlocked a safer path for our planet. Back in India, another young innovator was thinking about the sun, not for warmth but for power. Meet Japtek Singh Bhamra, a class 12 student from Himachal Pradesh. He won the Build a Better Future award for his creation, the Solar Mech engine. This brilliant engine uses concentrated solar heat and electromagnetic induction to generate mechanical energy. It also works in reverse as a heat pump. Versatile, clean, and full of promise. Japtek's work earned him a $15,000 grant. But more than money, he has earned hope from communities looking for energy alternatives. His invention is not just green, it's glowing with purpose. Now meet Priyanka MN, a class 10 student from Tumukuru, stunned the nation with automatic pesticide sprayer, a device that senses crop needs and sprays pesticides without manual effort. Her model featured simple, sustainable mechanisms and practical design that helped reduce pesticide exposure for farmers while improving spray precision. She earned national recognition through the Inspire Manak National Science Exhibition, where her idea was featured among the top Karnataka models showcased in New Delhi. Priyanka's invention reminds us that sometimes a student's response to a local problem can ripple out to become a national example. Smart, safe, and forward-thinking. Real innovation doesn't always arrive in labs. It often grows where empathy meets ingenuity, in schoolyards and rural dreams. Now, it's time to thank and celebrate one of India's proud sons, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla of the Indian Air Force, whose journey to space has marked a new milestone in Indo-American space collaboration. Shubhanshu Shukla became a key astronaut aboard the Axiom Machine 4, a mission that carried more than just dreams. It carried science, diplomacy, and India's deep commitment to Earth observation. His role was central to the NISAR mission, the world's first joint Earth monitoring satellite developed by NASA and ISRO. From aboard the International Space Station, he worked on real-time calibration efforts, validating how spaceborne radar interacts with Earth's surface, that is, data that will help predict floods, monitor crops, and study climate changes. But his job wasn't limited to experiments. Shubhanshu also acted as a mission-level bridge between ISRO and NASA, relaying technical feedback, sharing live orbital observations, and ensuring smooth integration of Indian space science with international operations. As he floated in that vast silence above us, he wasn't just representing India, he was carrying the dreams of 1 billion hearts. Thank you, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, for looking down from space, not just with science, but with care.
That brings us to the end of this edition of Radioscope, wherein we took a brief look at women scientists who have made enormous contributions to science. We then addressed the issue of the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021-2030. We also addressed the need for self-care of young women doctors in India. And lastly, we took a look at some scientific technological innovations. We hope you enjoyed your evening with us. The program was presented and produced by Rosalind Matthew. This was a presentation of Akashvani Bengaluru, brought to you by Akashvani Delhi.
Radioscope, the National Science Magazine program.